Welcome to Suzanne's Saintly Kitchen. We're marching on with more March recipes. Today we're going to do Saint Photina Soup Surprise. Her feast day is March 20th. And then we're going to do Saint Matthew Beauvais Crusader Sandwich. And these two recipes pair really well together. First, we're going to learn how to make mayonnaise, which you'll be using in your Crusader sandwich. And the French invented mayonnaise, and it's such an interesting story because we start with an egg. Now let me tell you why you should make your own mayonnaise. The oils that have snuck into the food chain are causing a tremendous amount of health problems. Food allergies, soybean oil, which is vegetable oil. My children have a serious allergy to that. Canola oil is not good for you. Corn oil, cottonseed oil, and now they're even saying sunflower oil. So we want to stick to the sort of tried and true oils, which olive oil is great. Butter is great. Butter's really been maligned, and butter is really good for you. And I'm going to go into that in another cooking episode. But also palm oil and coconut oil are great. Now some people can't have, all of those, but hopefully you can at least have one or two. But by making your own mayonnaise, you are automatically protecting yourself. And you'll see mayonnaise that says made with olive oil. And then if you look at the back of it, it's like 1% olive oil, 98% soybean oil, 1% canola oil, or something like that. So making your own mayonnaise is super easy, it's super healthy, and it's the thing to do. So start with an egg. And the story on mayonnaise is truly amazing. Okay, the French, the Count of Richelieu, was having a dinner party before a battle with the British. Does that sound so French? And his chef was concerned because food supplies were getting a little low. So I'm gonna do 1 egg and half a teaspoon of salt. And so the chef, because he was concerned about the food supplies, decided he would mix the eggs and the oil together and then serve it as a dressing. I don't know if it was for the salad, the meat, what. So then a tablespoon of vinegar. Now, some people are allergic to vinegars because vinegars are made from GMO ingredients sometimes. So I buy like Trader Joe's rice vinegar because they're committed to not selling GMOs, and so that's really good. And I talked to a lady one time who was allergic to vinegars and told her about that, and she uses organic vinegars now. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to turn on, I'm using a blending stick, you can use a blender, and you turn it on, and you want to really whip this up. So anyway, the Count had his dinner party. No one had ever tasted mayonnaise before and thought it was one of the best things in the world. And so they beat the British at the battle. There was a port city named Mahon, and then mayonnaise was born, and it was named Mayonnaise, Mayonnaise, for the city that they beat the British. And that's the story of how the French chef came up with mayonnaise. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, but it's kind of frothy, bubbly. Frothy, bubbly is what we want. Frothy, bubbly. So I'm blending that, and then I've got 3/4 cup light olive oil. Light olive oil is good because it doesn't overwhelm the taste, and it tastes like real mayonnaise, the kind you're used to getting in the store. So I'm going to pour that in a very thin stream while I continue to run my hand blender. So thin stream, just blending it in. You'll see it start to thicken. You can see how thick that is. Those are just run right off of this. So obviously children should never use one of these, cooking tools, these blending sticks, but they're great. And you're gonna see me use it also with the St. Photina Soup Surprise. So I'm just gonna take that apart like that. They've really improved the design of these. And we're gonna set our mayonnaise aside because we're going to use this in just a little bit. But you can see how thick that is. It's not even coming off. Really nice and thick and super healthy for you, okay? So coming back over, we've got that ingredient for our Crusader sandwich, and I've got 2 cups of water in here, and to that I add 2 teaspoons of sugar. This is what we're going to boil the zucchini in, and then 2 teaspoons of salt. A little bit extra there. Okay. 2 teaspoons of salt. This soup is a surprise because, okay, who would get excited about eating zucchini soup? Maybe some women's groups, okay? But this is like a really cool, cozy soup to serve on sort of overcast, cool spring days or even sunny spring days because it's got just this beautiful green color, and I serve it year round, but I mean, it really is a pretty springy soup. It's also really pretty in the fall. But we cut the ends off of our zucchini, and I buy organic zucchini. Why? Because zucchini was one of the first things that they ever began making GMO, that and squash. So I always get organic zucchini because I think that it's very important to avoid genetically modified produce, really everything, if you can. It's going to make a huge difference for your health. So I cut the zucchini in half and then those halves in half, so quartered it, and then I'm just cutting slices. And we're going to put this in the pot and get it boiling, and then we're going to reduce the heat, and you'll see what else we're going to do. But I call it Soup Surprise because 1, that was the name of the recipe. I got this recipe years ago. And 2, because some people will be put off if you say zucchini soup. Like, my children are not the type of people who just eat everything. They're cautious. I wouldn't say they're picky. I would say they're careful. Kind of picky sometimes. Anyway, if I ever had announced we're having zucchini soup, I would have been met with blank stares, maybe even curling lips. Soup Surprise, though, and then they see the Crusader sandwich. It's like, okay, that looks normal. Maybe I'll try it. So, but it's really good, and once people try it, they love it. I mean, my youngest son, Patrick, I didn't think was going to be all over this, and he really likes it. So it's a safe thing to make for your family. But it is named for Saint Photina, who lived in the 1st century. Saint Photina, tradition holds, is the woman at the well. And you can always trust tradition, because if a tradition is held, there's a reason. The early church was persecuted. The early church, which was Catholic, by the way. A lot of people hear, oh, the early Christian church, and think it was a Christian denomination. No, the early church was Catholic. There were no breaks in Catholicism until the Eastern Orthodox broke away, and then there were no breaks until Martin Luther broke away. And then when Martin Luther broke away, that led to Henry VIII breaking away. Most of the breaks have always been political, and the church, when it needed reforming, which was pretty much all the time because it's made up of people, reformers would be raised up in church history, like St. Ignatius of Loyola, St. Francis of Assisi, St. Cajetan. And so we basically need some reformers now, because the church is always in need of reforming. And when you don't hear the church saying that, that's a sign it's really in need of reforming. But back to Saint Photina. So the tradition is that she was the Samaritan woman at the well, and she had gone out in midday. Why? Well, she needed water, but she didn't want to see anybody. She was going at the time when most women were not going to get water, because most women went early in the morning before the heat of the day set in. And so it's really interesting, because Samaritans, we all know the story of the Good Samaritan who helped the man who'd been beaten up by thieves and left for dead. And the Samaritan picked him up and took him to get help. Well, the Samaritans were really rejected people. And the Jews traditionally had nothing to do with the Samaritans. And so this was one of the reasons that Photina was so shocked that Jesus was speaking to her. And she even addressed that with him, that I am a Samaritan woman. Why are you even having anything to do with me? And this shows how Christ came for everyone. And in some respects, I really think the heart of God longs for those who feel the most rejected. And that was definitely the case with Saint Photina. He told her about her life. When she responded to him, you know, I have no husband, when they were talking, and he said, what you are saying is true. You have no husband, because the man you're currently living with is not your husband, and you've had several more besides him that you've called your husband. And so she was so floored that he would be able to know this about her and know her life. But this was the most important part of the story about the woman at the well. Jesus told her that she was there to seek water, or to get water, but that she was in the presence of the living water. And she even asked him, how can I get this living water you speak of? Because he said this water will never run dry. And she said she couldn't believe it. And he told her, everyone who drinks, in John 4:13, he said, everyone who drinks of this water that she was getting will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. And this water that I shall give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. And then later in John 4:25-26, Photina responds, I know the Messiah is coming, he who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will show us all things. And Jesus said to her, I who speaks to you am he. And the words that Jesus spoke to Saint Photina, he speaks to us all. He wants us all to have the living water welling up in our hearts. And this is why it's so important to spend time in sacred scripture, because it truly is transforming. It is the living water, because Jesus is the living word. And so when we spend time with him in sacred scripture, we're connecting to that living water that he spoke to Saint Photina about. Okay, so we've got the surprise ingredient to Saint Photina Soup Surprise. That has been boiling. Now, I get the water boiling with the zucchini. Remember, 2 cups of water, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of sugar. But then I turn it down and I keep it at a healthy simmer, like kind of a boil, but not boiling, because you don't want it to boil dry. That's happened to me before. So I pass that on to you. Okay, so then over here in this little skillet, I've got 4 tablespoons of butter, and I've got a large onion. And so our recipe says that we're going to saute the onion until transparent. So basically, that's what we're in the process of doing. And then we're going to combine these goodies. But back to St. Photina. So she was a woman who was searching, all right? Aren't we all? But she was searching for something. She didn't know what, but then after she met the Messiah, Christ, she knew her search was over. And so what did she do? She ran into town and told her other Samaritan, they lived in Samaria and they were called Samaritans, all about that she had met the Messiah and that they had to come and meet this man. And it's great because you know what? People didn't blow her off. They went out. They went after Jesus, and then they invited him to spend time with them. And I think he spent 2 days. And at the end of the 2 days, they told Photina, I mean, we believe this man is the Messiah, just not because you have said it, but because of what we have seen and heard from him as well. So it's just so beautiful. So then she was so filled with the Spirit of Christ that she went and began preaching. And she was imprisoned in Carthage because of it. Think of this. I mean, this is just amazing. What an amazing woman. Okay, then she went to Rome, and legend has it, and remember what I've said about legends, they exist for a reason. Keep in mind, there were no faxes, no computers, a lot of people didn't know how to write, so they passed things on verbally. And so she converted the daughter, this is the legend, of Emperor Nero and 100 of the daughter's servants. And because of this, she and her 2 sons, along with her 2 sons, Joseph and Victor, were put to death in Rome, along with some other Christians. And the thing about that is, this is the price that the Christian faith, it's just one of the stories. We're going to hear about another one in a minute. The price that the Christian faith has come at. It's come at a great cost. It's come at a great cost for Catholic Christians throughout the centuries. And I just want to say, any friend of Jesus is a friend of mine, okay? So I'm not against any Protestant denominations. I just think it's interesting that a lot of Protestants do think they were the first Christians, and then they think the Catholic Church kind of created itself, when in fact, that's not what happened. And the reason it's called the early Christian church was because there were no other Christians in the world except Catholic Christians. So Christendom, everybody was Christian, meaning everybody was Catholic back then. Okay, so let's turn this down. They are nice and transparent. Can you see that? They're just, I love onions when they get to that stage. Okay, so now we're going to, hopefully, yes, I have a tablespoon. Now we're going to do the 4 tablespoons of flour just shaken over this. And in fact, I'm going to turn it off because sometimes I do that, If I'm not going to be right on it and I don't want it to burn, I just turn it off and then you can always turn it back on. It's very forgiving, okay? That's 3, and that's 4, and then, so we blend in the flour, the salt, and the pepper, so it's calling for ½ a teaspoon of salt, and ½ a teaspoon of pepper. And I got a pepper grinder this time because in the other video you saw what happened when I shook in a lot of pepper. Got a cloud of pepper. Okay, so that looks really good. Plus, hey, there's nothing like freshly ground pepper, right? So I'm going to stir this in. And you want to get it fully incorporated. You want to let it cook for just a couple, maybe a minute or so. just so that flour taste kind of calms down. But basically what you're doing is you're making a roux in with these onions. So Saint Photina, this is the other thing that I think she shows us. Well, I mean, she shows us so many things. When she found Christ, she changed her life. She didn't make Christ conform to her or go out there and start, you know, telling her version of Jesus. She changed her life. She conformed her life to Christ. And then she became an evangelist, a witness for him, because she couldn't be contained. It was, his effect on her was that profound. All right, so after this, blah, 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 salt, pepper. Okay, then I've got to dash over and get the vitamin D milk. I've turned that off now so it doesn't burn. So meanwhile, back at the refrigerator, and I believe in using vitamin D milk. Number one, a lot of people are vitamin D deficient, okay? Number two, so we can add this milk into the zucchini. It tastes way better. Give yourself the stuff that tastes good, okay? Then you're gonna find you're satisfied. You learn how to do this in the light way. You learn how to eat like this. It's how I lost my weight. It's how I've kept my weight off. But there was also a study with women consuming, and it was a huge study. I should know it, of course, off the tip of my tongue, but I have it in the lightweight journals for people. There was this huge study where women drank vitamin D milk. What happened? Cancer rates went down. Yes, it's good for you. A lot of the things we've been told aren't good for us, it turns out are good for us. Okay, so now I'm going to add the onion mixture in there. And I'm going to get it all because that's the good flavor. You wouldn't just want to have zucchini and milk. There's a reason no one's selling that in stores. Okay, so yeah, we've got this. We're going to stir it up. And now I'm going to go back here and I'm going to get the trusty blending stick. And we're going to come over here. I've washed it off from the mayonnaise. And we're just going to, and I've got the stove turned off too, by the way. So yeah, we're just going to blend this soup. Now, if you want to use a blender, that's okay too. Oh, it's so pretty. It's just the soft green, just a very springtime green. This is a great soup to have for Lent because it's got great flavor and it doesn't have any chicken broth. Also great for St. Patrick's Day if you need like a little soup before dinner, luncheon soup. Okay, this is looking good. So I'm gonna tilt it up so you can see. See that pretty soft green? It's beautiful. All right, now let's get going with St. Matthew Beauvais Crusader Sandwich. And remember that the soup surprise is named for St. Photina because she got the surprise of her life when she went to the well that day. And the words that Jesus spoke to her, he speaks to each of us. All right, now we're going to make our Crusader Sandwich. This is named for St. Matthew Beauvais. Matthew, it's really Matthew of Beauvais because people took the name of the place they were from. Beauvais is in northern France. It's north of Paris. And so Matthew answered the call of Blessed Pope Urban II for the First Crusade to free the Holy Land from Islamic domination. It was a real problem. They were destroying holy sites. They were taking Christians into slavery. And when I say it was a complete nightmare for Christians who were taken into slavery, I am understating it. So it was just, they realized they had to do something. And so he took the cross from Bishop, Bishop of Bouvet, Bishop Roger of Beauvais, and then he left for the Holy Land. And so this is named for St. Matthew because the pita bread would be the bread that he would have found when he went to the Holy Land. But the ingredients, the cheese, the ham, and the mayonnaise, even though it hadn't been invented yet by the French, would have been things that he would have recognized. So they would have had butter in France, though, at that time. So we're going to make the sauce for the Crusader St. Matthew Beauvais Crusader Sandwich. And we've got the mayonnaise that we made, and we're going to add 2 tablespoons of mustard. I'm using yellow mustard. You can use whatever kind of mustard you like. And so we're going to stir that up. And the recipe, if you're using store-bought mayonnaise, calls for adding 1/4 of a cup of milk to really thin it. I'm not going to add the milk. I might add actually, I'm not going to add the milk. I think it's a good consistency the way it is. And so that even looks kind of Dijon colored. But we've got our pita bread here that we're cutting in half. And so you open the pita bread like we saw for the St. Cyril of Jerusalem pitas. This is a great recipe, okay, because one, you may have pita left over from St. Cyril of Jerusalem pitas, and also because it calls for ham, and you can use leftover Easter ham if you've got that to make this. So that's another great thing. And boys and girls love these Crusader sandwiches. I'm just going to open up this ham. I bought ham, but if you've got it, you know, that's great too. Do those. I like to do it kind of thick with several slices, so it's substantial. So we'll take our sauce, our Crusader sandwich sauce, and spread it on the inside of the pita bread. And then we'll put the ham slices in. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to even cut these. We'll put the ham slices in, and then we'll put the cheese on top of that. So that's what you're looking like. And then put them on a foil-lined cookie sheet, and you stick them in the oven for 10 minutes, and they heat up and the cheese melts, and it is amazing tasting. But back to St. Matthew. So think of it. He left for the Crusades. I'm sure he had a family. He had loved ones. Who knows? I mean, Crusaders sacrificed a lot. They've been very maligned. Most people who malign the Crusaders don't know history and don't know what the Crusaders were actually up against. Anyway, he was captured by the Saracens, and so he was faced with, if he wanted to obtain his freedom, he had to deny Christ. He wouldn't do it. He would not deny Christ. God bless him. And so he was beheaded, and he went straight to heaven because of it. And the welcome that he received, we can't even fathom. And it was as instant, that welcome, as his death. And all of heaven rejoiced that he was there, because Jesus tells us in Matthew, how appropriate is that? 10:32-33. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I will also acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny before my Father who is in heaven. And so St. Matthew, even though it seemed like he was losing, he wasn't losing, he was winning. He was winning eternal life with Christ. If he had denied Christ, it would not have gone well for him at his soul review, and he would have been in purgatory a long time if he had repented and confessed it. But Christ is very clear about those who deny him. And there are a lot of ways to deny Jesus. You can deny Jesus the way you live. Deny Jesus the things you accept. You can't do it. You cannot do it. You must remain loyal to Christ and not deny him in words or actions, because it can seem harder, like it seemed harder for St. Matthew, but actually he's in eternity with Jesus now, and that's the goal for us all. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and this Crusader sandwich represents the sacrifice. Our faith has come at a price, and some people treat it like it's nothing. It's not nothing. So I've got the St. Matthew Beauvais Crusader sandwiches out of the oven. They were in the 350 oven for 10 minutes, and oh, they smell amazing. They're warm. The cheese is all melty. I mean, this is just like the kind of thing people love to dig into. So the last little addition, and I've got dill pickles here that are like a treat for me because they're pre-cut. They're like thin dill pickles, but I've cut a lot of dill pickles in my day for these sandwiches. So you can cut your own dill pickles, you can use hamburger dills, or you can get the flat ones like I'm using here. We'll put those in, and there's just something about, it's kind of in a way like a little Reuben sandwich. There's just something about that pickle with the ham and the Swiss cheese. And then we've got our beautiful St. Photina soup surprise. And I should mention that St. Photina's feast day is March 20th, and St. Matthew Beauvais' feast day is March 27th. And he lived in the year 1098. I forgot to tell you that, I think. But you've got a beautiful soup. You've got a warm sandwich. You can put some croutons on the top. It's a perfect Lenten dinner, perfect Lenten lunch, except for not with the Crusader sandwich, but just the soup by itself. But I hope you've enjoyed learning about St. Photina and St. Matthew Beauvais. And we owe so much to these beautiful saints, and I thank them both for their inspiring example. If you want to learn how to eat great food like the food I'm fixing here, lose weight and keep it off, go to Lightway, LIGHTWEIGH.com, and the saints feast day cookbooks that I reference are on that site as well. St. Photina and St. Matthew Bouvet are both from the second Saints Feast Day Cookbook. Lightway.com, Lightweigh. Thanks for listening.